Hey, Gita.
Corey, would you like to do the introduction?
Are we broadcasting?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Gita. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Pierce. I am VP of Customer Centricity here at Optimal Strategics Group. And first of all, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to attend our webinar today. I would say this morning, as I'm out in California, but we've got attendees coming in from all over the world. So thank you very much for your time. Today, we'll be talking about how pardon me, we'll be talking about how modern ethnographic techniques can help to fill in crucial gaps in customer knowledge as our markets become and our tasks become far more challenging, how using a range of modern ethnographic techniques can help to fill in those gaps. Today, I am our Global Head of Qualitative Research, Jill Wilson, will be talking about this topic and leading us through how we can make great strides in this area. We have allocated time for questions at the end of the session, but if you do have questions while the session is going, there is a questions pane on the control panel in the GoToWebinar platform. A little bit about Jill has over 25 years of experience in various types of qualitative research and has come to us to focus upon building an ethnographic research practice within OSG that complements our current range of services, and she'll be talking about that. Jill has taken on projects in everything from healthcare and health and beauty to consumer packaged goods, and we're very excited to have her, and I'm very excited to introduce Jill Wilson.
Thanks very much, Corey. So yeah, just to sort of cover the points that we'll be discussing today, what I wanted to look at, and hopefully it's interest to our very wide-ranging audience, is looking at the dynamic nature of markets and how that's changing, especially obviously with the introduction of information technology and technological advances. But importantly, within that context as well, is to look at the complexity of the decision-making now that customers face. And from that, really to ask ourselves, are we missing something from that customer understanding? Is there a knowledge gap there? And potentially, can ethnographical approaches fill that gap? So just to start off with, it's probably no great surprise to everybody. You know, there is a feeling of information overload, especially amongst all types of different customers today. So there's been a sort of rapid, a sort of wholesale change in information technology. And if you think about maybe even your personal purchases, so if you're going to go out and buy a car, how that has changed now. So you can look at every aspect of a car online, you can look at the comparisons, you can look at the reviews. If you think about as a patient what you can do, you can go online, you can look up information in terms of symptom checkers, you can get a pretty good idea in terms of the range of medications that are available, you can access patient associations pretty quickly, and there's a lot of forums in terms of patient associations, so even looking at social media and Facebook. And even when you think about a simple thing about in terms of, you know, buying a shampoo, you know, gone are the days that it would be normal or anti-dandruff. You know, it's a lot more complex now, and that complexity actually represents an opportunity for the marketeers today, because if you look about how you can be making a value for that customer and making a niche for yourself within the market, it's very important to be thinking about not just the dynamic nature of these markets that are changing, but also looking and understanding what value means to the customers. They're a lot more discerning. So the challenge really, there are opportunities, but obviously the challenge is how well do you actually know your customers? And if you think about the very complex needs that they have, not just at that functional level, as I was saying before, in terms of being quite discerning in terms of those emotional factors as well, that will be driving their decision making. So understanding the customers is more difficult than ever. Yeah, so if you think about their complex range of needs, if you think about what's driving their decisions, it is becoming more and more complex. And part of that, obviously, is the nature of the market as well, especially in terms of markets becoming very cluttered with a very staggering and sometimes confusing range of offerings as well. So together, there are obviously those real challenges in terms of really understanding how are customers almost cutting through that clutter to make those purchase decisions. And again, it doesn't matter in terms of where your customers are. It can be the consumer in the street. It can be an oncologist. It can be a businessman. It's very wide ranging in terms of the need to get a better understanding of your customers, and really importantly to be filling that knowledge gap. So one way to think about your customers and how that has changed is to think about the sort of the pre-digital customer and the post-digital customer today. And obviously, if we think about the dynamic nature of information technology, as we look forward, this will be changing even more so. And how that has impacted, when we think obviously about what we're trying to do through marketing, how that has impacted across that purchase process. So, the pre-digital sort of age, yes, it was a pretty standardized process. You could follow that through, even within a healthcare context, you could look in terms of that patient journey, and again, it would be pretty standardized. If you now think about how that's changing, it's become a lot more dynamic. It's constantly changing, constantly shifting. And if you look at the second point on this slide, when we think about purchase decision making, again, very simple terms, if we were thinking something in terms of a retailer, it's very much about the point of sale, where it's happening. But now, if you think about the multiple moments of truth before the purchase, so those interventions that you can make with your customer, there's a lot more of those moments of truth, those interventions that can make a difference in terms of that purchasing process. And again, the dynamic nature of the market is changing, these multiple moments of truth. And alongside that as well, you've got a much more discerning customer. So pre-digital, fairly limited need states, it could have been more around the functional needs and to some extent some sort of hierarchical emotional needs. But now those need states are much more diverse. So it's not just about an overall emotional benefit. It's about really being specific and narrowing down exactly what these emotional benefits could be as well. So it's a lot more diverse range of those need states. And lastly as well, if you think about the decision-making factors, pre-digital, it was pretty held common belief, 6 to 7 factors will impact on the decision to purchase. That is no longer the case, and they're now saying that it's at least 15 or plus more factors that can impact on the decision-making process. And if you think again back to some of the examples that I gave a few slides ago, think about maybe if you were buying a car 10 years ago versus buying a car today. Think about maybe if you were going into a supermarket and selecting a cereal. By the very nature of the markets, you can see the complexity of that decision-making process as well. So in part, it's the customer becoming more discerning, but also it's really in terms of the nature of the market and the multiple offerings that is also shaping those customers' perceptions as well. So they are evolving a very simple way to look at the differences there, but hopefully it highlights and we all recognise that this is a very dynamic and changing world, and we need to be really thinking ahead of the curve and meeting these evolving customers' needs. So if we think about market research, if we think about what we've done traditionally, what we're in the danger of doing is only leveraging on sort of current attributes and benefits to simply stay in the game. If we only focus on what's driving that at the moment, what's key in terms of the choices that you're making, you're not going to be rising above that clutter, and you're only going to be staying in the game. And there's a real danger here that we don't understand or have a complete understanding of the actual customer, and there's a creation of what we've called the knowledge gap here. So it's that incomplete understanding of the customer behaviour that prevents you from standing above the clutter. And if you think about how many offerings are on the market, you need to be looking at where those gaps are in understanding. You need to be making sure you get a complete understanding of what's happening and what potentially could be driving customer behaviour. I'm just going to stop at this point and see whether there are any questions. If you just bear with me 1 second. If you have any questions at this point, please, please post them now. I'll just have a quick look. Okay, none as yet, but hopefully if you do, then please let me know and we can have a look at it at the end. Okay, so what can you do about it? Yes, we've talked about the opportunities there, and we've also talked about the challenges here. To succeed in this fire environment, it's obviously crucial to go beyond the obvious here, and to really go deep into customer motivations, to uncover and understand the customer in the most complete and possible manner. Part of that is, again, that future-focused approach. You've got to be sort of ahead of the game here. You've got to be thinking and anticipating your customers' needs here. And part of that is not just to be looking at what's driving current behaviour, but ultimately to be thinking about the cultural shifts that are happening, both at a global and a local level here. What are the outcomes that customers are looking for beyond just the benefits? And again, you've really got to be challenging yourself in terms of are we really stretching our customers' understanding? Part of that is to put yourself in your customer's shoes, really immerse yourself in the world of your customers. So it's not just about understanding their functional needs, but it's also about understanding their emotional needs as well. And I think some of the challenges you find that we have, especially with the diverse range of clients that we work with, is, well, actually, our particular markets are not really functionally driven. Having worked across a range of different areas, both consumer, both healthcare, both business to business, the importance of emotional drivers is increasing as well. So you cannot ignore those emotional drivers. I mean, having with oncologists. It was very clear there were very emotional drivers around their treatment decisions in terms of patients, their feelings around the brands that they're using in their armamentarium. So again, some of these emotional outcomes are going to be pretty clear, key in terms of differentiating your offering as well. And as we were mentioning before, when we looked at the pre and post digital customer, you need to get a very good understanding of where are these interventions here, where are these touch points on the road to purchase. If you look at some of the things that are happening today, personalisation. If you know, there's real frustration from people in terms of, well, I'm getting emails, you know, I'm getting text messages with information that's not really relevant to me. And obviously, you know, pretty good has been Amazon in terms of sending offers or highlighting offers that they know based on their customers' past behaviour will be relevance to them. So personalisation is going to be part and parcel of this as well. So understanding not just the potential touch points, but which of those touch points are really going to help to activate purchase and very much navigate your key customers to your particular brand or product. Okay, so as I was saying at the beginning, what we want to do is try and understand, actually, if you think about ethnography, can this be a way to bridge this knowledge gap? Probably many of you will be aware that, you know, ethnography has been around for a long time. It's you know, seen as the study of people and its cultures, and it's been in the toolkits of anthropologists for decades. It was probably around about the 60s and the 70s that marketeers and researchers quickly realised, actually, there's potential here in terms of the merits of ethnography when we think about it within a commercial setting. So, you know, you've probably heard of people sort of spending time with consumers, living with them, you know, going out with them, maybe even going on shopping trips with them, etc. And they have been, in the majority, have been very successful in terms of helping to give that additional insight, helping in terms of the design of new products and services, and also systems as well. And if you look at the recent advances here, especially in terms of smartphone technology, obviously there's been advances in terms of wearables as well. This approach to ethnography has been greatly enhanced by mobile technology. And as it becomes increasingly difficult to differentiate, the digital ethnography can close the potential knowledge gaps with customers, and importantly be focusing on that truly customer-centric approach. And, you know, I joined OSG very much to understand the customer more. Our whole proposition is based around the customer centricity, and one of the ways that we do that is using ethnography to get closer to bridge that knowledge gap for our clients, and obviously for the marketeers that we work with. Mobile ethnography is one way to bridge that gap, and if you think about what's going to happen, you know, estimated that, you know, 1/3 of all people around the globe will be smartphone users by 2017. So once again, it's not just, you know, your consumer, your FMCG customer, it's your business workers, it's your patients, it's your healthcare professionals are spending more and more time using their phones, with apps making up the majority of the time. If you think about even within a healthcare professional context, you know, it's pretty normal now if you go and spend some time with your GP or with your specialist that they will either refer to their computers and you will look at that information together. They will have apps on their phone in terms of the latest information, diagnostic pathways, or even in terms of medications, especially in terms of peer-reviewed sources that they will be using. If you think about business workers, again, very much in terms of using apps on their phones, using the website to access additional information. So, you know, to some extent we see mobile ethnography as very much about social media, about, you know, the sort of the average Joe in the street, but actually, you know, we almost have to challenge ourselves and think about those business customers as well. It is a valuable tool that is being used throughout the workplace here. So it's a much more accessible and actionable way in terms of helping to drive marketing strategy here. And the real question is in terms of whether it's just simply a nice to have, or is it actually going to be fundamental in terms of bridging that gap. One of the questions that we faced, and we sometimes face when we talk to clients about ethnography, they'll talk about previous studies that have been done in the past, so, you know, maybe in the last, you know, 2 to 5 years. And there have been some real question marks around the return on investment of ethnography. So great study, yeah, the marketeers went out and spent some time with their customers, it was great immersion, yeah, it was really emotive, the ad agency loved it, but actually in terms of strategy, in terms of being quite actionable, there have been question marks in terms of whether ethnography is a valuable way to capture and understand the customer and ultimately to be driving that strategy. I think because of the nature of the markets, if we look in terms of the information overload, if we look in terms again of that evolving purchase process and that evolving customer, we really do have to ask ourselves whether it's just that nice to have in terms of ethnography now. And fundamentally, if you think about the accessibility of mobile ethnography and, you know, as I was saying, the rise in terms of smartphone apps, the wearables and the web-based project management systems as well, we can get a more remote, although pretty insightful view of that customer through observation and still get a pretty good idea in terms of the immersion in the lives of the customer as well. So the question really is to the audience is really, you know, yeah, is actually an ethnographical approach something that you would consider when commissioning research, or are you seeing it as almost, yeah, it's that nice bit of immersion, and you know, it's maybe the testimonial that we show in front of our marketing teams, and it is very much that nice to have. And you know, if we, as I said, if we look at that evolving customer, the real challenge is now, I would say that that's not necessarily the case. To get that complete understanding, you're going to have to really think about that immersion with your customer. So in terms of OSG's approach to ethnography, I suppose what I would see as the more traditional ethnographical approaches here. It's very tried and tested, it's well tested. We offer a very effective range of ethnographical approaches, and we still use these approaches today, all designed to paint that rich customer picture. I apologise for some of the audience, but for those who maybe don't know of some of these approaches, there are things in terms of field immersion sessions, so actually a moderator going out, spending time with the customers, just you know, following them, maybe doing some short interviews, but very much understanding what's going on in their environment. So it's pretty critical if we're supposed to be understanding what's happening and thinking about the future. Sometimes we need to be observing, and those field immersion sessions are really key, because customers don't always articulate their needs, they don't always articulate what's happening in their world, and spending time with respondents in the field and observing and interviewing and sometimes filming can be very rich and insightful. If you think about a retail environment, in-store observations again, we're doing a study actually at the moment where we will be spending time in store understanding what is happening at the moment of purchase there. So from the moment they get into the store, as they walk around, to the moment they actually, go to the relevant aisle and shelf and pick up the product, we will be observing what's happening in store. So it's very much important in terms of, again, thinking about those interventions, thinking about what's happening on that road to purchase. That's something that we'll be doing either in store. We've also been looking at that as well when we think about patient journeys within a healthcare context. And moving on to that as well, so whether it's observation in the workplace, we've picked an example of hospital observation, so in the hospital, again, we can be seeing on the ground what is happening. We can be looking at those particular behaviours, and that can be very critical in terms of maybe product innovation, or thinking about ways that you can be looking at those intervention points where maybe you could be helping your customers. Think about patient information, nurses in terms of their relationships they might be having with patients. You could be looking at what types of literature is available in the waiting room. Again, you can be getting an idea of how busy the healthcare professionals are. You can be looking again at terms of maybe their emotional needs that they don't really articulate when they're just doing a more traditional one-on-one interview. And last but not least are the video and the online diaries. So, sometimes we ask them specifically to go out and film what's happening, maybe to be recording that and loading that on terms of an online platform. So very much keeping a weekly record of what's happening in their lives. So a whole range and plethora of different ethnographical approaches, which have been pretty much tried and tested, I would say, over the last 20 to 30 years. Where it's starting to look and become a lot more accessible is when we think about what we call mobile ethnography, and it offers significant strengths here when mixed really with more traditional techniques. I think the danger is that when you start to talk to clients about the opportunities that mobile ethnography can give you, it cannot just be a standalone methodology. There are some dangers here that if you're asking a customer to go out and film, talk about their experiences, give you those rich raw insights on an everyday level, I think you need to be making sure as well that you are actually following that up and getting some one-on-one understanding with that customer as well to give a bit more clarity and context around that world. So yes, you don't have to go out in the field, yes, you don't have to spend that amount of time, but I would say just balance that with maybe some more traditional one-on-one interviews to provide that sort of triangulated view of your customer. So the mobile ethnography, it is a highly accessible method, and it captures insights that are very much woven into the fabric of normal everyday life. And if you think about the issues that would happen with a researcher, there is always a researcher effect. So if I go out and spend time with a customer, I will find, that I will have some sort of impact on their behaviours. If you think about the technology and you think about mobile technology, it's become part and parcel of everybody's daily life. So it becomes less intrusive, and they are more in control of it. They're not being constantly observed. That we ask them obviously to cover certain areas that we want to capture, but again it's also quite an intimate methodology as well. So we find on studies that we've done there's almost a lack of reticent to talk to the camera. There isn't necessarily the interviewer there. It's almost like a dialogue of what's happening in their lives, and there's an intimacy around that they might be more willing to share through mobile phone footage than they would through one-on-one interviews as well. And that intimacy also allows us to look at those almost spontaneous, in the moment, raw insights that we get, because it's so accessible in terms of the mobile ethnography approach. Their phone is on, is always, well, mine certainly is, and any teenager, I'm sure they would be the same. The phone is always at hand. It's always there. It's ready, accessible, and we can capture those moments. And again, going back to think about the complexity of the world that we live in. Think about the complexity of the purchase process, and think about the complexity of the customer's needs, and ultimately what's impacting on them and the information that they get. This is a much more accessible way to try and capture what's important to them. Yes, they have some control of it. Yes, we will be telling them some of the moments we want to capture, but ultimately they will be choosing what they share with us. And some of that choice will be very important in terms of dictating what's important to that particular customer as we think about the strategy to drive purchasing. So just to finish off, I wanted to go back to this particular slide. So ethnography, is it a nice to have? I would challenge the audience and say probably not anymore. I think it's pretty fundamental if you're going to unravel that complexity of the decision-making process. But I think what's also important as well is once you use ethnography, once you're certain of the range of different factors that are going to be driving that purchase decision, and it's really important that you get a very clear, exhaustive list of those emotional and functional factors. It's very important that you get a very rich understanding of where the interventions are, where the touch points are, how the purchase process is changing, what are the outcomes that your customers are looking for. Once you have all that information, it is really important as well to be able to sift through that and focus on those customers that are going to represent the most value for your products or your portfolio of products. And part of OSG's approach is to use ethnography as a way to feed into some of our other methodologies which allow us to segment the customer, to look in terms of how we segment the customers based on the decisions that are driving their choices, and very clearly understand how we're going to meet their complex needs. So again, it's more about thinking and focusing on core customers, personalising your approach to them, thinking about what's going to activate them when they're faced with a sort of myriad of different possibilities within the market. So that's my last slide. Hopefully you found it enjoyable. I will be checking now to see whether there are any additional questions online, but if you don't have time now, then please, just email me any additional questions.
Jill, one issue that I think it would be interesting to hear you speak about is are there any market restrictions in terms of filming and using mobile ethnography out in the world? Because I think we're all getting used to, the ubiquitous selfie and the amount of, almost unintentional surveillance that we put ourselves under with our smartphones. Have you encountered anything like that?
There are some restrictions in some markets. I mean, I haven't got time to go through all of that, but say, for example, if you look at Germany, there are restrictions in terms of filming people and having images of people and using those images. And obviously there are, again, some cultural issues as well. So I used to cover research in Saudi Arabia. You would never see a group discussion filmed in terms of females. So there won't be it won't be accessible to every market, every type of consumer, and there will be some restrictions. But if you, again, going back to the use of smartphones, it is going to become obviously a global phenomenon, and where applicable, I will be using that as a much more accessible way to reach out and understand those customers.
Thanks, Jill. I have a question here from Matthias Blomgren. Matthias, thank you very much for passing that on. The question is, do you have experience of using mobile ethnography in the hospital setting with patients, for example, pre and post emotions of a physician visit?
I haven't had it in hospital. What I have done before is we've got a patient or a number of patients before they go into the consultation. We've got them to film outside and capture their thoughts and feelings going into that consultation, and then afterwards we've basically asked them to capture their thoughts and film themselves coming out of that consultation. There has to be, again, it goes back to, there are some nuances in certain countries where the patient physician consultation cannot be recorded or cannot be filmed. That will also apply in terms of some hospital settings as well. So again, it goes back to what we can do and where the restrictions are. But that particular study, I think, was very still very insightful, because we were able, again, through the accessibility, get those initial thoughts as they're coming out of that consultation and what happened from their perspective. Hopefully that addresses your question.
Yeah, a couple more here from Young, our attendee. Thank you very much for these. Two questions. One, how could you pass the vendor credentialing process if you're doing it in U.S. hospitals? And then following up, do you need to get permission from healthcare providers and hospitals in advance to record, and how does that work?
Yeah, you do have to be looking at that and getting that permission. I'm sort of global in terms of we're doing it in Europe, we're doing it in different countries, but you do have to look at the peculiarities, and it might just be for that particular hospital as well. So you need to be looking out and reaching out to the relevant people in terms of getting their permission to film. Again, it depends. If it's about recruiting an individual physician, and maybe some of that is just capturing their thoughts and not actually filming the hospital itself, they may be able to do that. They might be able to do that in their office if it's just them by themselves, and we've done that before. But I think you've got, again, it comes back to how comfortable they are with doing that, and again, it really does vary in terms of who gives permission, and who's comfortable with filming, especially within a hospital setting, because you've got to obviously be very, very conscious of patients and obviously filming people that maybe haven't given their permission. So again, it's like anything really, as market researchers, we certainly don't want to do any harm, and we reach out and we talk to the relevant people in terms of getting that permission to be filming.
Excellent. Thank you, Jill. If there are no further questions from our attendees, well, I want to thank our attendees for sticking almost 10 minutes over the session here to go through these questions. First of all, I want to thank Jill for a stimulating and enjoyable telling of how we can use modern ethnographic techniques. Thank you so much. And thank you for our attendees for taking time today to come into our session and hear about what we're doing. We would like to follow up with you, so you can expect to have a note to say thank you very much and some further contact information, and we appreciate it very much.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.